Ohai. It is Stale, the city in the Minsk region of Belarus on the Usha River. The population makes people. For January 1, 2016. In the city there is a well-known Nesvizh castle entered in the UNESCO World Cultural Heritage List, the Farni Church, a town hall of the 16th century, and also some other architectural monuments. The first mention of the city was connected earlier with a name of Yuri Nesvizh. In some sources of Nesvizh, who with the team was involved in fight on the Kalka River on May 31, 1223. The story of temporary years. As a result of battle he died, and the code of a name of the prince with the name of the city became the reason of his identification as specific prince of the city of Nesvizh. The cities with this name are known in Zalesie, on Volhynia and in Ponmany, however till 1980 Nesvizh local historians insisted, without any telling arguments, that the died prince ruled in Ponmany. The archaeological excavations which are carried out to Nesvizh at the end of the 20th century testify to the history of the city, which began not earlier than the 15th century. The version about the specific principality wasn't confirmed, no proofs of existence here of defensive works are found. The yard standing here was only the center of the small volust. Thus, the city rejuvenated practically for 2 centuries, the first written mention of him is carried to 1446 now. Its tale is published in chronicles in connection with transfer of the town from the Grand Duke Kazimir Jagiellończyk to Nikolai Ivan Nemirovich. In 1492 the Grand Duke Alexander gave the city to the richest Lithuanian magnate Piotr Kishk. Thus, Nesvizh took over to the known Sort Kishik, one of representatives of which, Anna, in 1513 married January Radziwill known as Bearded, which received the city in possession as the bride's dowry. On a toe. In 1533 Nesvizh finally passes to Radziwill. In 1547 January Radzivill's son Nikolai Radziwill achieved assignment of a title of the Prince of the Sacred Roman Empire for some kind of, and the city made the residence which value increases in 1586 after giving of the legal status to her indivisible hereditary position. Ordination, which is transferred by right of succession only to the eldest son in family. The Nesvizh ordination remained in Hans Radziwill till 1939. Earth blossoming of the city began in the 16th century and is connected generally with a name of the first Nikolai Christopher Radziwill Sirotki's ordinate, the son Nikolai Radziwill Chiorny. Having inherited wood and Nesvizh from the parent, he carries out huge work on his reforming. Constructions are replaced with stone buildings. The randomness of the medieval town is reformed in the regular quarter system which remains so far. There is no life of citizens away from reforms also. Having returned from a travel across the Mediterranean and the countries of the Middle East, the orphan becomes impregnated with spirit of changes and reorganizations of a patrimonial nest. Realizing the ideas, at the first stage he exempts petty bourgeoises from many feudal duties, weakens a tax burden and turns the city into typically European, involving in dealers and handicraftsmen. The city quickly develops. In it the school opens, the bath, hairdressing salon and hospital are under construction. Weavers and sartorial, metalwork and furriers' shops begin to work. A bit later, already in the 18th century, manufactory production and a workshop of art casting is arranged. In 1583 construction of Nesvizh castle begins. In the 16th, 17th centuries the Aryan school where classic languages, divinity and natural sciences are learned works. In 1562 in the city the Nesvizh printing house in which books, the first in the territory of Belarus, in Belarusian are published. In 1562-1571 the famous Belarusian educators Simon Budny and Vasily Tyapinski printed books. Opens. Its style is also the ancestor of theatre of Belarus. The first stationary theatre, Komediko, is open exactly here. First being amateur, the theatre gradually passes into the professional course, turning into court, gives representations and outside the city. In August 1584 Nikolai Surotka issued a relationship with the invited Jesuits in the form of a donative leaf according to which 2 Jesuits offered Lipsk with 6 villages. Thus in Nesvizh arose Jesuit. In 1591 consisted of 4 classes and theological office. Since 1610 Adam with musical bursa, and since 1620. Boarding school. For children of an impoverished shliata worked. Since the end of the 17th century at a collegium the theatre worked. The library of a collegium contained about 15,000 volumes. In 1773, in connection with abolition of an award of Jesuits, it was closed and given for barracks, and the church of a collegium was transferred to the category of parafialny. City kernel now, as well as in the last centuries, is the market square. Nowadays central. In which center there is a town hall with the high 6-level tower symbolizing in general opinion, the Magdeburg right granted to the city in 1586. In a town hall the burgomaster's office, magistrate office, the courtroom, treasury and archive was located earlier, to her the main city streets met. Since 17th century the town hall gradually acquires the malls which subsequently formed the closed P-shaped contour. The architectural complex of the area underwent significant changes in the middle of the 20th century during her reorganization under modern needs. For the short historical term 1584-1616. With the assistance of the Belarusian and Italian masters taking into account the last achievements of fortification art, the city and the lock were built, and the settlement located at some distance from him was surrounded with a ditch and shaft. At entries into the city stone gate with towers, Bromazamkovaya, Slutskaya, Kletskaya, etc. were constructed. The Yusha River waters lifted by dams became an important element of strengthenings. Monumental stone building of the end of the 16th, 17th century is presented by the Loch, Brahma churches, monasteries of Bernardines. 1598. A Bernardinek. 1591. Dominicans. 1672. Jesuit Church. 1593. At this time in the city there was already an osteria. At the beginning of the 18th century the city falls a victim of Northern War. In 1706 it is completely plundered by the Swedish troops. In the 18th century the court chapel, ballet troupe. Since 1740. Military school and school of naval officers in Alba. Suburb Nesvizh. For Radzivill's army worked in the city. In 1764 and 1768 Nesvizh is occupied by the Russian troops as a result of Catherine II's opposition and Serkhanko again. After the second section of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth in 1793, the possessory town is a part of the Russian Empire. Since May 3, 1795 becomes the district city of the Minsk Namestnichestvo, but with a condition. And meanwhile to put diligence the remembered places to get in our treasury purchase or promeny, or others decent bargains, good to treasury. To what in a reasoning of Nesvizh and Slutsk, the grant and available to Vlalets their Prince Radzivill a debt to our treasury on which the general prosecutor will inform you in details is represented. In case of a nudobnost in the to find from state settlements the drudgia to transformation into the district cities capable, and then the Gorodskaya is right as above in the first office it is told to appropriate to the remembered cities from the places, from owners acquired him from state settlements in that new rank of turned. Terry Volume 23 No. 17.327. But at the addition of states of the Minsk province of December 31, 1796 and on June 28, 1802 it isn't shown among the Powiatowi cities. For January 1, 1896 the population -10237 inhabitants, from them 5692 Jews, 2890 Orthodox Christians, 1545 Catholics, 32 Protestants. A synagogue and 7 Jewish houses of worship, 2 Catholic parishes, Orthodox Church worked in the city. Since 1921 Nesvizh is a part of the Polish state, in 1939 structure of Bs, in 1941-1944 is under occupation of Germany, since 1991 in independent Belarus. National structure on a census of 2009. Belarusians of 11992 85.46%. Russian 944 6.73%. Poles of 775 5.52%. Ukrainians of 187 1.33%. Armenians of 32 0.23%. Roma of 23 0.16%. Nesvizh Castle, the palace and castle complex which is in a northeast part of the city. In the 16th-19th centuries, the center of the Nesvizhsky ordination and the residence of its owners from the sort Radzivill. Church of the Lord's Body. Farny. In Nesvizh, a monument, the first in the territory of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, in style of protobaroque. Construction of the temple continued 6 years. 1587-1593. Consecration took place on October 7, 1601. The church is a tomb of a Nesvizhsky branch of the sort Radzivill. In a church the ancient operating body remained. The Dominican monastery was built in 1672 on the place of present movie theater and had the library and school closed in 1835 in the territory. The last 2 years of her existence in it the famous poet Vladislav Sirokomlya who paid a lot of attention of Nesvizh in the work studied. Closed in 1873, the monastery was transformed to the Teachers' Seminary which began the work in 1875. Among students of seminary was many people who contributed significantly to the cultural history of Belarus. The most important representative of pupils is the Belarusian writer Yao Kolas who will remember the city of youth in the work still more than once. The convent a Benedictine was constructed in 1596 at the expense of Sirotki and his wife Elabeta Euphemia and served for the intended purpose till 1887. The territory of the monastery reached our days in the form of monastic constructions, a tower brahmi and modern buildings of teacher training college which main school girls, as well as 4 centuries ago, women are mainly. The entrance on the territory of the monastery is protected by a 3-story tower which the dome with a spike crowns. The building of a tower was built here in the second half of the 18th century. The niece Sirotki Christina, having become the abbess and having accepted a name of his late wife, I served here almost half a century, having got the deserved respect and love from Mothers Superior. Also the remains of the earth shaft surrounding the monastery and playing an important role in the system of city defense reached us. The Sluts Brahma, the only gate which reached our times welcoming the city visitors and locals driving to the old city from the east. Earlier on the right and at the left directly the earth shaft surrounding the city approached them. Nesvizh Town Hall, the oldest of the remained town halls in Belarus. Recently the building of a town hall was restored. It was built in 1596, it is reconstructed in 1752. The monument has lines of late Baroque and the Renaissance. The castle tower, the tower constructed in the second half of the 16th century, was a part of a system of city strengthenings. She remained practically without changes and now is used as the bell tower. The House of the Handicraftsman, a monument of architecture of Baroque, a sample of a stone house of the beginning of the 18th century. City basis, Nesvizh Castle, is entered in the UNESCO World Cultural Heritage List. In 1562 in the city the Nesvizh printing house in which books, the first in the territory of Belarus, in Belarusian are published is open. In 1563 there was a newspaper, the first in the territory of Kivekel, here, Navna Terrible and Zalostovi. Up to 1571 in Nesvizh educators Vasily Tyapinski and Simon Budny, who published here in particular, Catechism, and Justification of the Guilty Person Before God. Printed the books. The Belarusian writer Yao Kolas, being trained in Nesvizh Teachers Seminary, I wrote here many verses and comic stories which I made at local literary soirees subsequently. It is stale, the ancestor of theatre of Belarus. Komediko, the first stationary amateur theatre which became professional and giving representations outside the city. Evno Jacobson is the watchmaker living in the city in the second half of the 18th century. I invented the calculator which became an arithmometer prototype. Also far. Write comments. Read comments. Interesting people will tell interesting stories. All of good mood and good luck.